Welcome to the Mango Effect podcast, where every week we explore a range of ideas and inspiration that all culminate in designing the lifestyle that we've always dreamed of. No topics are off limits. We get into the practical, the hypothetical, and the downright juicy stuff. I'm Mindy Rosser, your host and lifestyle cheerleader, and I'm here today to talk about why consistency is not always the answer. This is something that comes up for me a lot, and you've probably felt it too. We hear so many people preaching, it feels like, that consistency is the answer. Just be consistent, just show up. The person who wins is the person who keeps showing up over and over and over again. And I think that is right to a point, but I feel like it falls short in so many areas. And so many of us are consistent in the wrong things. And when we are consistent in the wrong things, we're not going to get where we want to go fast enough. And we're going to wonder, what's the problem here? I am consistent to a fault. I'm gritty. I have tenacity. I keep showing up. I'm persistent. All of these things are values that I hold, but we're being consistent in the wrong things. So if you've ever spent weeks or months developing a habit, working a new strategy, trying a workout routine, sticking to a diet, then you have this moment when you wonder, is this actually working? Should you stay consistent or should you try a different approach? When that moment happens, it's your intuition telling you to listen. And that's very difficult for those of us who have trouble listening to our intuition. I am one of those people. I like to look at facts. I like to check off my habits. I like my to-do list. Some of us are geared and wired that way. Others of us are not so much, and it is easier to listen to our intuition. So no matter what end of the spectrum you're on, it's critical to pay attention to when consistency is not working for you. And that takes a lot of discernment. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of patience with yourself. It takes some insight and perspective. So let's get into this and talk about it. Like, okay, Mindy, okay. Consistency is not always the answer. So I confess, I'm kind of one of those people who is consistent to a fault when it comes to showing up. Like I'm that person that will do the hard thing day after day, no matter what comes my way. I consider myself to be really gritty and have that kind of stick to it type of nature, but this has not always served me well. And there have been so many times in my life where I've looked at consistency and said, this is leading me absolutely nowhere. And you realize there have been months, years sometimes that have passed, and that consistency is not helping you. So doing that same thing over and over again doesn't always get us where we need to go. There's a saying, and you probably heard it before, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. So if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And sometimes that's a good thing. A lot of times it's not a good thing though, especially if you're trying to navigate a pivot. If you are hell-bent on professional and personal growth, it's not going to serve you well to be consistent for years and years on end. You're going to have to change up what you are being consistent in. So this is nowhere as true for me as it is for my business. So I have a business where I work one-on-one with people, and I've done that for many years, more than a decade. Helping them with their social media presence, helping them with LinkedIn, helping them grow their business, fill their sales pipeline, do their marketing. And I have basically focused mostly on serving one-to-one clients. And that has served me very, very well for many, many years. A couple years ago, I decided, I really want to do something different. I'm very entrepreneurial. I really wanted to scale my impact, and I wanted to get away from the one-to-one stuff because it's beautiful to be able to work one-on-one with people. I do enjoy that process a lot. But the downside is if I'm always doing one-to-one, I can never scale beyond that. And I can, handle probably 10 to 12 clients max at any given time. And then that's it. And I don't want to hire a bunch of team members. I don't want to scale I'm not looking to grow a big marketing agency. So I really had to sit with myself and say, okay, I want to make X number of dollars. I want to live a certain type of lifestyle. Is this one-to-one client work actually serving me? And I had to say to myself, no, it is not. And yes, there are ways that I could continue working with one-to-one clients by raising my rates, by going after more corporate gigs. Yes, those are all options. But I had to realize, okay, what do I really want to do? So I started looking outside and figuring out, okay, there are all these other ways that I can make money online with my skill set. Because I'm an expert, because I kind of have a little bit of credibility in my area of expertise, especially with LinkedIn and social selling, I realized I can actually do this whole, digital CEO thing where you are selling one-to-many offers. You are working with group programs, you're leading cohorts, you're doing this email marketing thing, you are doing funnels and Facebook ads and really cool online programs and teaching cohorts live. And it sounded really, really exciting. But the thing was, I had to learn how to switch all of those things I was so freaking consistent with to a whole nother way of thinking, a whole nother way of being. And that part was really hard for me, because then I'm looking at all the things that I had been consistent with up to that point. A lot of them were becoming irrelevant, and they were things I needed to not be so consistent in. And I actually needed to figure out and determine what activities, what goals, what revenue goals, leads, building an email list, all of these other things I needed to become consistent in, and how to prioritize them. And that's very challenging. If you've ever been an entrepreneur, if you know any entrepreneurs, you realize that there's a lot that goes into building a business, and people make it look very easy, especially when you're like, oh, I'm receiving all these like emails and everything. It looks beautiful. Their landing pages look great. Their programs look amazing. They've got all these testimonials. Well, it took them a really long time to get to that point, and they had to learn how to be consistent in the right things. So as I was getting into this new space, I started becoming consistent in a number of things that experts in the space would tell me to do. And some of them worked. And some of them I'm like, why am I being consistent in this? This is actually something I shouldn't be doing. So I should be delegating it. It should be something I should automate. Maybe it's something I don't even need to do at all, because it might have worked for so-and-so, but it doesn't generate the same results for me. So there's this constant evolution of what to be consistent in and what to let go. And as humans, we have to learn how to figure out this process. As business owners, we are constantly figuring out, okay, where do I need to be consistent? What can I get rid of? What can I get off my plate? How can I make this smoother? How can I improve on this process? And so just being consistent for the sake of being consistent, to check something off on your list that you don't need to be doing, or that is not valuable, that should not be done by you, is not helping you. It's leading you nowhere. And sometimes that's really hard to face the facts when you're thinking, but I put in all this time. I wasted all of this time learning a new skill, or I got this new tool and it was supposed to work wonders for my business, and I realized it wasn't even necessary. Or I took this course and it just didn't give me the results that I wanted. And that's okay. I think as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as experts in our fields, just as humans, we have to realize when we say, okay, it's water under the bridge, I'm going to let that go, and I'm going to be consistent with the right things. So when consistency leads nowhere, you pay attention. You think, okay, this is not serving me. What can I do differently? Now, another way that we get consistency wrong is I call it giving ourselves busy work. Now, I'm that person that does this, and I sometimes will give myself busy work when I am avoiding things. So I have not only applied consistency in the wrong places in my business, like I was describing, things that led me nowhere, I've also applied it to things that required absolutely no consistency. Like I will look at it, for example, for a while I was on a mission to have a spick and span house, and you can ask my partner, Jason, he will tell you that I go through these phases. So I will buy all the things related to housekeeping. Like we have, and I'm afraid to admit, we have like 100 magic sponges sitting under our table right now, because I was like, you know what? We're going to magic sponge the house, completely the house. And they're still sitting in a package. I think we might have used like 4 or 5. I've got a duster that I bought months ago that I was just going to go do all the fans in the house and all the windows and all the cleaning supplies. I watched hours of videos on house cleaning, and I was determined. I put it in my schedule. I'm like, I'm going to make this a habit. I'm going to clean the house. My kids' rooms are going to be immaculate all the time, and I'm going to be consistent to a fault with my housekeeping. So the thing is, as an entrepreneur, as somebody that is the breadwinner of the household, my goal is to generate revenue for our house. It is to make sure that I am managing all the things in our house, but not the housekeeping. I have delegated that. I've outsourced it to my partner, Jason. And I told him that if he ever wants to hire a cleaning service periodically, I'm happy to do that. Like, I'm happy to support him on that front. But otherwise, he's in charge of the house cleaning. So why am I jumping into his responsibilities, making him feel terrible that he's not doing a good enough job, and wasting time that should be spent inspiring other people, should be spent on my business, it should be spent having fun with my kids, it should be spent with exercise and health and nutrition and reading and learning. And instead, here I am scrubbing the toilets in the house when Jason can do things literally. He can clean a bathroom in like 10 minutes, and it will take me at least an hour, if not longer, to clean it. So why am I trying to be consistent in something that is just busy work for me? And when you've probably done something similar, we all have at some point. And I think it's because we give ourselves this busy work because there's something else that's deeper that we're avoiding. And for me, what I was avoiding, like in the most recent housekeeping stint of mine, I was avoiding focusing on revenue generating activities and what I actually should be doing, because I was caught in this mix of pivoting and feeling like stuff just wasn't working as fast as I was hoping it was going to. I was happy with my numbers, but I'm like, they should be better. But I mean, that's a typical entrepreneurial thing. Everything should always be better. We should always be farther along than we already are. So I was trying to avoid that type of work. I was avoiding the deep thinking. I was avoiding my planning. I was avoiding things that would actually take me closer to my life vision and to my massive transformative purpose. And I was plugging it with busy work and being consistent. And it was all under the name of, I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to be like this housekeeping superstar. I don't know. So it's kind of funny when we look at it from a different vantage point and we can laugh at ourselves and have a little bit of humor about these things, because we all do it. And yours may not be housekeeping. It may not be in your business, but it's probably somewhere else where you're thinking, you know what? I actually don't need to be as consistent here. And you give yourself a little bit of freedom. Like, hello, you don't have to do everything all the time perfectly. Give yourself a break. A lot of times our energy is going to be better used elsewhere. And that takes a lot of soul searching. So if you want to make consistency work for you, if you want it to be a positive and not a negative, it's all about learning when and what to be consistent with. So when should you actually be consistent? And what should you be consistent with? I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but what is your massively transformative purpose? I call it my MTP. If you've never read the book, The Art of Impossible by Steven Kotler, I highly recommend it. I talk about it on some of my other episodes as well. He breaks it down into like this formula that is your driving purpose as a human, not necessarily for your business, although your business probably ties into it. Your expertise, your professional, whatever your professional endeavors are, they're probably a part of this massively transformative purpose. But really, this is like your personal mission statement. What are you here on this earth to do? What do you want to do? Not what somebody else told you it should be. What do you actually want to do? How are you impacting your community, your family, the people around you, the planet, animals, whatever that is for you? Write it down. And it's going to be a very short phrase. So for me, my massive transformative purpose is to create content that inspires people to create their own lifestyle by design. In a nutshell, that's my massive transformative purpose. That's why I'm here on this podcast talking, because I'm living out my massively transformative purpose by sharing what's working for me. And so this is really important to get clear on, because when you do, and when you're looking at things and thinking, I don't know if I should still be consistent in fill in the blank task, project, whatever it is here, then you're going to look at your massive transformative purpose and think, okay, yeah, this either aligns or it doesn't. Sometimes it's like an antagonist and you need to really eliminate it from your life. So massive transformative purpose, huge. Nail that down. Now, another thing that is part of figuring out consistency and when and what to be consistent with is what I call my life vision. So I have a life vision. It is about a page and a half if it was in a Google Doc or a Word doc. And it describes my perfect day. It takes it from start to finish, everything in between. And that is coming from my life book. So I went through a program called Life Book. John and Missy Butcher, fantastic program, highly recommended for every single human on the planet who wants to create their lifestyle by design. It is the best program. When I found it, I thought, I've been looking for this for like years, and I didn't know it existed until I found Lifebook. Basically, what Lifebook does is it helps you figure out what you believe in 12 different categories of your life. And so you have a purpose, you have a vision, you have a promise, and you have a strategy for every single area of your life. So 12 categories. You can look it up if you're really curious. So what that kind of comes down to, after you go through all 12 categories, you end up with something called your life vision. And everybody does it a little bit differently. How I did it was just writing out my perfect day. But it took into account all 12 categories of my life. So I read my life vision literally every single day from start to finish. Every time I read it, unless I'm really tired, every time I read it, I get this feeling of warmth, of excitement, of purpose, of passion. And it reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I'm headed towards. And life vision can be so important for you as you are figuring out, okay, what should I be consistent in? How does that align with my massive transformative purpose? So for me, my life vision, my massive transformative purpose, my MTP, go hand in hand, and I read them every day. And so because of that, I understand and can almost immediately now, sometimes it takes me a few weeks, but usually within a day or so, I can look at an activity, look at something I want to do, and realize, is this in alignment? Or is this not? Is this something I need to be consistent with? Or is this something that I'm just giving myself busy work or doing something that leads me nowhere? So getting those two things in order is really going to help you if you're struggling to figure out, I don't know what to be consistent with. I feel really lost. Massive transformative purpose, life vision. So if you want to be a high achiever in life, and I feel like all of us do, that's probably why you're listening to this podcast. You're a high achiever. You believe in lifestyle by design. You want to create your own life. You have to decide where you want to be consistent and what you can just ditch altogether. And that is very, very tough for me, even from the perspective of someone who likes to maintain control. So if you like to maintain control, if you're a little bit of a control freak, it can be very difficult because sometimes consistency is just a way to disguise control. We don't want to let go of something because we're losing control. And I think that's a subconscious thing that can really come into play when we are realizing something we're consistent with. And it could be something good. It could be a bad habit. It could be a good habit, but it's just not really aligned with where we are now. Whatever it is, sometimes consistency is just a way to disguise control. And we have to recognize that for what it is. Now, choosing consistency over intensity, this is something else that comes up a lot. When we're thinking of consistency and intensity, sometimes we want to do both. We want to be really intense. We want to be very consistent with something, but we have to remember that consistency, healthy consistency, not just consistency for the sake of it, but healthy consistency is sustainable. And I feel like with consistency, it has to be something you can do over time or for whatever time period you need to be consistent in. And so if it's not sustainable, then you shouldn't try to get consistent in it. Does that make sense? So for example, as a surfer, I want to be consistent with my pop-up. So if you are not familiar with surfing, there is a move called a pop-up, which means it's when you're on your board, you're on your belly, you're paddling into a wave, so paddling with your arms to get into the wave, and then you go from being on your belly to up on your feet. And so that pop-up has to be consistent. If it is not consistent, you will not be able to catch waves consistently. You will mess up on your bottom turns. You'll fall off the wave. You'll get smashed by the wave. So for many surfers, one of the first skills you need to learn is to be consistent with your pop-up. And that has to be sustainable over time. So it's very, very important to be consistent in that way. And for me as a surfer, it's like, okay, my pop-up, that's a very fundamental skill that I need to have as a surfer, and I need to continue to work on that until I get it down. Once I get it down, once my feet are always in the right place, that the pressure of my feet is correct, I'm facing the right direction, then I can progress as a surfer. But until then, I need to be consistent with that pop-up. It's not about being intense in the surf. It's not just like, okay, I'm just going to paddle as fast as I can and catch a wave. It's like, it's about being consistent with the right things, the next right step, which leads us to, okay, so you want to be consistent. So first of all, like I said earlier, we have to think about our purpose. What is your life purpose? That is going to be your guiding light for where to be consistent and where not to be. So after you figure that out, after you figure out what, even if it's still a work in progress, it sometimes takes time to get it just how you like it, then you got to think about, okay, so here's my life vision. Now, what's the one next skill or habit or whatever it is that you need to develop consistency in to start achieving that life vision, that life purpose? So is there a skill, a habit, a project, a task that you need to develop consistency in? For example, if my goal was to write a book and that was like at the top of my life purpose and vision right now, what would I need to get consistent in? Probably writing every day. As we know, for writers, writing every day is key to developing the habit of writing a book and to getting it done in the right fashion. And you have to develop that skill over time. So that would be the very next thing I would need to develop consistency in is, okay, I need to write every day. So match it. Think about whatever your life vision is. What are you trying to achieve next? And sometimes like the big vision that you have, you need to kind of zoom out a little bit or zoom in a little bit depending on where you are to figure out what's the right next step. What's the next thing you should focus on to get to that big vision? And then will being consistent with this skill actually get you there faster? So you have to make a determination whether that actually is the best skill to focus on next. So going back to our example of a writer that's writing a book, is writing every day going to actually be the best next skill to focus on next? For most people, I would say probably, but not for everyone. Some people may have already mastered that skill. So maybe they've been writing a blog every week. So they actually need to focus on something else. Maybe they need to focus on structure. Maybe it's grammar. Maybe it's style. Whatever that is that they need to focus on, you kind of have to make that personal call for yourself. And so what somebody else, it's easy to listen to other experts and say, well, they said that I need to focus on this skill. But listen to your own intuition. Also tune into yourself to figure out how maybe you've already mastered that skill. In that case, don't develop consistency on something you've already mastered. Focus on the next skill that you need to develop. So you really have to develop a lot of perspective and insight on yourself, your skills, what you're really good at, and what would actually serve you best. And then you want to think about, okay, so what is my plan to develop this consistency? And is that sustainable over time? So going back to our example with the writer, is it feasible for this writer to write every day if that's the habit he or she wants to develop? For some people, yes. If there's a mom and she has young kids or a dad that is, staying home with the kids, then that may not be feasible. It may not work to write every day. So in that case, you think, okay, then I need to figure out another way around this. Maybe I need to write a certain number of words in a week. That gives you some flexibility with areas that you need to be flexible in. So you got to think about not just taking people's advice and saying, okay, I'm just going to run with that and be consistent with that. And then we wonder why we fail. We have to actually take those suggestions and map them to our own lifestyle. And that's the key here. It's like, okay, what's actually going to work for me? What's actually going to fit my lifestyle? What actually fits my priority? Is this still a priority? We have to ask those hard questions. Remember, consistency trumps intensity every single time. So you don't want to go hard and heavy at the beginning and expect the best. You really want to think, okay, is this sustainable? Can I do this over and over again? So let's kind of bring this back. Let's bring this home now. So we're going to bring it back to a metaphor that I love with surfing. We're talking about the pop-up. We're talking about developing skills, talking about being consistent. If you get consistent with the wrong things in surfing, you're actually going to sabotage your progress. So an example here, I should give it for myself. A very bad habit for new surfers is to just go for whitewater waves. So if you're unfamiliar with a whitewater wave, it is basically a wave that is already broken. You're catching the whitewater and just kind of riding it straight. And it's really easy to catch those most of the time because you just kind of pretty much plop your board in front of it and there's enough energy in the wave that you can catch it. So even if you paddle a little bit, you'll likely catch it and pop up. And so if you get stuck practicing that skill over and over again, you will never be able to catch what we call green waves or unbroken waves, which are the waves you actually want to catch as a surfer, is unbroken or just after they're starting to break, depending on your board and skill level. And so we have to think about, what are we being consistent in right now? Are we shortchanging ourselves? Are we not challenging ourselves enough? Do we need to actually revisit what we're being consistent with? And how is this going to serve us in the long run. And so where in your life do you actually need consistency? After we've been kind of talking about this all this time, like what's coming up for you? Listen to your intuition. And then where can you let go of consistency? Maybe there's one thing you're thinking, Mindy, I could really let go of being consistent here. You will feel so free too. Just letting go of something that you felt like you had to be consistent with is just this empowering feeling. And then how is consistency driving you closer towards your life vision and your MTP? Do you have one? If you don't have a life vision or an MTP, then put that on your list. Write that down because it's really going to help you and serve you as you are figuring out this whole consistency thing, habits, doing the right thing, making good choices, being strategic with your business, with your career, with your family, with your relationships. And then DM me on Instagram if you want to share your take on consistency, whether you love it, you hate it, you have another perspective that we didn't talk about today. Let's encourage and inspire each other. So if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Mango Effect podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And I would absolutely love it if you could write a 5-star review for the show if you're really enjoying it. We're a new show, so any reviews and subscribes we get will definitely help us as we grow. And I will see you on the Instagrams at Mango Effect Podcast, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.